welcome to Ill-Equipped History, brought to you today by Barry Manilow. This is Morgan, one of the co-hosts of Ill-Equipped History, and I am still sick, so my voice is husky.
She's extra husky. She's bearded, sitting by a fire, shirtless, husky. I mean, this is sexy, Morgan.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've got, like, the top knot going, and, like, I've got, like, bushels of arm hair. I look like Gaston.
Could you, for science, go chop some wood, roll the sleeves up, chop some wood for me? I want to see if it's vibing. Okay. You know, for science.
Okay. I'll give it a shot.
I need a flannel. Okay, thanks.
I'll give it a shot just for you. I'll have, like, the open flannel with, like dirty blue jeans.
You gotta have the suspenders.
Yeah.
With the flannel.
Yeah. And the
axe
work
on
boots.
the hip. Little hatchet on the hip.
Yeah.
Sounds like I need to read a book. Okay.
You need to go see a lumberjack show, Emma.
I really do. Listen. Every time Nick and I go camping, you're damn right I'm staring at him chopping wood. You're damn right. I'm a simple woman.
You have a type.
And apparently the type is wood chopping and trailer backing. So it's hot. I don't know why.
But you know what? You know what you like, and you married what you like. Sure so I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
This is Emily, by the way, my co-host, co-founder of this podcast.
Yeah. Go crazy.
I'm still thinking about when you gave me my Christmas present and you said, from Emily from Ill-Equipped History.
From the staff.
From the staff. Like, it's not just the two of us.
I was so proud of that. I giggled while I wrote it. Like,
oh, that cracked me up. It was almost as great as the gift.
Yes, I use that bag all the time.
I do too. I took it when Kyle and I had our little weekend getaway. That was my bag that I took.
One of these days we will disclose what it looks like to y'all.
Yes, I think it's a very sellable, marketable, merchable design.
Yes.
Good job, Emily.
One of these days. Thank you.
So, sorry about the sickness. I thought it was just a simple sinus infection, but it has moved into my lungs. Therefore, the husky, low voice going on today. Yeah. So, I'm going to do my best. I don't feel bad. My body is just not responding the way I want it to.
That sounds like me every day. Just actively shutting down.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I had a committee meeting right before this, and I got on and I said hello, and the committee chair was like, Morgan, are you okay? It's like, I'm getting over something. She was like, okay, I didn't know it was you at first.
Yeah. Who is this?
Who is this strange man popping into our Zoom call? I don't know. It may not sound as deep to you all as it sounds to me. It sounds like I'm a baritone in my own head.
It is. I will say it's not as bad as you think it is.
Okay.
I would say it would probably be a little disarming over the phone if you didn't have the visual, because I'm looking at you right now and I knew you were going to be husky because you told me earlier. So I think if I came in blind, I'd be like, are you okay?
So like all of our listeners
yes
were caught unawares.
Like, who the heck was that?
It's me. It's a me. Morgan.
It's a me.
I'm just sick. So
it's fine.
Y'all are used to my sickness shenanigans by now, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we are full of shenanigans. Full of them.
Are. So many up in here.
we really hope you watch the video of our 100 100 episode celebration that should be out by now.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Hopefully. We'll see.
So that was a really fun time. And if you haven't watched it, go check out our YouTube channel. I don't know if you guys know, but we do have a YouTube channel.
We don't really post to it. Just our podcast episodes go to it, and we don't look at it ever.
No, it's one of those things, kind of like the merch, where we're like, we should start videoing ourselves, and then we're like, yeah, we'll do that, and then
it just doesn't
we're
happen.
Busy. We are busy bitches, guys.
There's so much stuff going on, but one of these days, maybe when we can hire an intern or something, we can start producing more.
Maybe by that time, my kids will be old enough and we'll just make them do shit. Because, that's free labor right there.
Yeah. And kids know technology. They know stuff.
Seriously. Like, I ask my son all the time to fix things. He's 7.
Well,
yeah.
Shenanigans. How about we get into our skit for today, so we can finish up part 2 of the 100 Years' War.
So more shenanigans.
Way more shenanigans.
I'm very excited about these shenanigans. Let's do it.
1429 in Chinon, France. Charles Dauphin, the heir of the royal throne of France, is languishing in one of his castles.
Oh, it's no use! We've been fighting this war for 100 years, and half of France is in English hands. We're still getting mocked about the Battle of Agincourt, and that was almost 15 years ago. We'll never win a major battle against the English.
Your Highness, don't give up hope. We can still do this.
No. I should just give up my claim. Henry's already declared King of France. I should just give up.
But you're the rightful king. Just 7 years ago, you said so.
Yeah, that was 7 years ago. A baby was named king above me, and I had the Battle of Verneuil under my belt. People called that the Second Agincourt. I'm a failure.
Suddenly, a messenger runs into the room. Your Grace, you have a visitor.
A jester who wants to laugh at me?
No, Your Majesty. She's a young woman. She has, a message for you.
A girl? A message for me? What could she possibly want?
You'll have to ask her yourself, sir. She demands to see you.
Demands me? Oh, all right. Bring her in. This I have to see.
Who is this mystery woman? We will find out later in this episode.
I love mystery women.
Who doesn't? Okay, so, where we left off. Really quick recap of the 100 Years' War up to this point. So,
please.
King Edward of England declared he had the rightful claim to the throne of France after his grandfather died. France said no. They battled back and forth for land for many years, with England primarily winning most of the battles. By this point, King Edward and his son Prince Edward are dead. King Edward's second son, Richard II, is declared king. He was declared king as a boy, but now he is a man. On the French side, they have gone through many different kings. Mm-hmm. When we're entering into the story, it is Charles VI, who had also been declared king as a young boy, grew up into kingdom, gave his 6-year-old daughter to Richard II as part of a peace treaty that lasted 28 years. We talked about it in the end of the last episode. Other just things to know. Right now, Prince Edward's brother, John of Gaunt, is trying to rule over Gascony / Aquitaine, which has been English territory for several centuries at this point, and France is trying to take it back. That's really where a lot of the conflict comes, is that England has Gascony, France wants it back because it's in France, England wants to keep it, with other areas going on. So that's the primary crux of the issue, is land battles. Is
Charles the Bad still batting?
I don't know if he comes up again.
Okay.
If he does, we'll just all be
annoyed,
jump scared.
Yes.
But I don't think he comes up again in this third phase.
Okay.
I'm trying to skim through my notes. I don't think so.
I just didn't know if I should prepare myself for him or not.
No, I think Charles the Bad, I think he's either dead at this point, because it has been, well, when we get in, it will have been about 50 years at this point.
Okay,
when we get back into the second phase. So it's been a while. So if he's still alive, he's old.
Gotcha.
So we're going to jump in with drama. So like I said, Richard II is king, and we have John of Gaunt, who is his uncle, Richard's uncle. In 1388, Richard exiled John of Gaunt's son, Henry Bolingbroke, for 10 years for political reasons I'm not going to get into, because a lot of other stuff happened. Like I said in the part 1, if y'all want more information about stuff I don't talk about, watch this YouTube video called 100 Years War, Full Story, Every Battle, Animated Medieval History on the Kings and Generals channel on YouTube. It is linked in the show notes.
Very nice.
The only reason I bring up Henry Bolingbroke is because he is kind of an important character in all this.
Okay.
So Henry was exiled for 10 years, and then John of Gaunt died, and Richard tried extending the exile to life. You're exiled for the rest of your life. And Henry said no. And he returned to England in 1399. In 1399, Richard had actually gone over to Ireland to quell a rising rebellion there. He actually died shortly afterwards. I think by 1400 he had passed away. And I couldn't remember, I think he either got sick or got injured and died of his injuries. And Henry Bolingbroke took the throne.
What?
As Henry IV.
What?
Yeah.
He was just exiled for a decade.
And he came back and he said, that guy's dead, I'm the king now.
Damn.
And I'm pretty sure it's his line that would lead to the Tudor line.
Wow.
Because this starts with the Lancastrians, and the Lancastrians were led into the Tudor line. If I remember my researching Henry VIII. So, important.
Yeah.
By 1407, so jumping forward about 8 years, Henry IV's son, Henry of Monmouth, he kind of became the regent because Henry IV had a lot of health issues and he couldn't really actively rule. So his son, Henry, again, a lot of the same names, was kind of ruling in his stead, but not king.
Right. So just speaking and making decisions and stuff, but he was not.
Yes. Yeah. And also rolling back the clock a little bit. I think in part 1 we had left off around 1388, 1396 is really when we left off, so we're going back to 1388. Charles VI, who's the current king of France, he actually had a lot of mental health issues himself. He actually had debilitating psychotic episodes.
Oh, shit.
One of which was that he thought he was made of glass. So pretty intense delusions.
That would be so stressful.
Yeah, especially in the 1300s. And someone has a psychotic disorder where they have delusions. And
he's the king?
He's the king. So it can either go really well or really bad.
Yeah.
Which we'll kind of touch upon a little bit later when we talk about the very important person we'll mention. So, his brother, Louis of Orleans, ended up taking the throne as Dauphin. So, like we mentioned in the last episode, Dauphin means heir apparent. So, I don't think he had any, I know he had daughters. I don't know if he had any sons lined up to take over the throne. So his brother.
Okay. Got the throne.
So a man named John.
Just some dude?
I'm trying to remember from the video. I wrote John of Burgundy ended up becoming Duchy of Burgundy. And I'm like, who's John? I don't remember who he's related to.
John?
Who is this man? I think he'd been in Burgundy for a while, but he became the duchy, which is basically Duke of Burgundy. And he and Louis I did not get along at all.
Ah.
And it got to the point where war was brewing between them. John did not want war because he said it would disrupt trade, and Louis wanted war because he wanted stuff. So Louis' side was known as the Avignacs, and the John side was known as the Burgundians, and it actually developed, like, this was a civil war within itself and created, like, two major sides of the war. And, like,
wow.
Even after kind of this civil war goes on, the people who supported Louis of Orleans are known as Avignacs even after this event.
Wow.
Kind of like the Jacobites.
Yeah.
So lots of unrest between the two, and in the end of 1407, Louis was dragged into the streets of Paris and brutally killed by assassins sent by John.
Oh, shit.
So Louis' son, Charles, another Charles, became the new Duke of Orleans and swore revenge upon John, which caused a civil war, which led to a coup. France is not doing well.
No.
They're really struggling.
Is this during the 28 years of peace between France and England?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all, like, England is going through their stuff, and France is going through their stuff. They're not even fighting. It's just all in their own countries at this point. In 1413, John of Burgundy was kicked out of Paris, and Louis of Guienne took over as Dauphin. And I'm sure he was a son
of someone.
I think he was one of Charles VI's sons. Just not, like, directly in line for the throne at this point, because I don't know if he was old enough yet. That same year, Henry IV died, and his son became coronated as Henry V.
Okay.
He was a very effective king. And
really?
The English people actually are like, finally, a king we like. I think they liked Edward, but they hated Richard, so they were very happy to have Henry.
Right.
He sent missives to Louis of Guienne and asked/demanded that the Treaty of Brittany be reinstated. And we talked about the Treaty of Brittany in the last episode. It was signed between Edward and, I think, Jean II.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check. I can't find out, but I'm pretty sure it was between King Edward and Jean II. But basically what that treaty said was all the lands stated on the treaty that would be given to England, including Aquitaine, Flanders, and Normandy, would be given back to England, plus the remaining ransom from Jean II, because France still hadn't finished paying off the ransom from Jean II.
Oh my God.
Because they were broke, and an additional 300,000 pounds.
Jesus.
So Henry was like, let's reinstate this treaty. Let's give us back our lands, plus all this extra money. And Louis was like, no. No. So thus ends the treaty that was between Richard and Charles VI. So Henry V invades France on August 1415. And he lands in Normandy. He marches to Harfleur and began sieging against this city. And after about 1.5 months, it surrendered. So, boom. Back in the war. Meanwhile, the Dauphin is setting up his own army to attack. So, Henry, his army wasn't really in a position to, like, keep going through France. So he said, let's go back up to Calais. Because Calais had still been under English control this whole time. It had been captured back in Part 1, and it would remain in control for the next 100 years or so. So that was a safe place to go. And as Henry was marching northward, the French army was following them, but they didn't engage until they got to Boggard. Mm-hmm. And this is where we get to the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. This was a basically depleted English army versus a fully manned, fresh French army.
Oh, jeez.
The English had 8,500 men, 7,000 of which were longbowmen, and 1,500 foot soldiers.
So many!
So many. Most of the men were longbowmen.
And we've discussed the longbowmen are crucial.
The French had 24,000 men. So we have 8,500 versus 24,000.
Oh, no.
So the French had learned a lot of hard lessons in their previous defeats against the English, and they were ordered to not make the first move. They were to wait for the English to move, and they would respond. But the French nobles, they hadn't been in a battle. There hasn't been a battle on French soil in, 30 years, at least.
Oh, shit. They don't know. Not
since, 1383. So it's been 30, 40 years at this point. So they're like, let's fight. So Henry, he saw what was happening. He saw that he's like, oh, they're trying to bait us into fighting. Right. So he moved his army forward in the battlefield in a straight line and then stopped when they got within longbow range and then started firing their longbows at the French army. And then the knights in the French army started reacting.
Right.
And they started their charge against the English. The problem was in this battlefield, it was freshly plowed. So it's very soft. And the horses that the knights were riding on started getting super stuck.
Oh, no.
The knights were exterminated by the longbowmen. Meanwhile, I thought this was kind of funny. There was a small regiment of, French peasants that had snuck around to Henry's forward camp and stole a bunch of his stuff.
Oh shit.
As all of this battle's going on, they're like, they stole one of his crowns. I guess he didn't leave anyone behind to man the camp and keep it from being stolen. I don't know. So after this first wave, if you could call it that, the French pushed again, but they were attacked by the English archers, but they were able to actually push them back a bit.
Okay.
But then the English soldiers held the line, so now it's they're face to face at the front. And so they're okay, we're getting somewhere, so more French soldiers move forward to join the battle. But this created an issue. Well, now there's a crowd crush.
Yeah.
Going on. So the advancing men can't move forward anymore, but then the people in the front can't move back and they can't retreat. All the while being shot by arrows still.
Yeah.
So the French forces ended up breaking, and the English ended up taking thousands of men prisoner, including the Dauphin and several other nobles.
Again, what do you do with that many freaking prisoners?
Well, this is what Henry did. So do you remember that that little section of peasants that went to go steal a bunch of Henry's stuff?
Yeah.
So as they were returning to, I guess, what they thought was their front line, an English soldier thought it was reinforcements coming in. And this is suspected. But Henry was like, we just captured 3,000 men. I don't want them to get weapons and suddenly attack us. So he had his archers go and systematically shoot all of their prisoners dead.
Wow. Mm. Damn.
Yeah. This is brutal. Brutal. And the French, of course, retreated. Major loss for the French.
Yeah.
They had almost three times the amount of men and lost horrifically.
That's wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So Henry takes his royal prisoners, because he didn't kill the noblemen or the Dauphin. He takes them back to England. And France is in shambles after losing its Dauphin. It's basically the closest they have to a king right now. Right. They don't even have a king. They have the Dauphin. And now the Dauphin's gone.
Oh, no.
So they're fucking listless. They don't know what to do. They're running on fumes, essentially. And Henry is taking this time to regather supplies, regather men, regather money to go back to France. And he started in on Normandy in 1417, and by 1420, all of Normandy was under English control.
Wow.
The new Dauphin, Charles, who would later be known as Charles VII, I'll just call him that from here on out, just for clarity, and John of Burgundy agreed to meet to come up with a plan to fight the English. But then John was killed as an act of revenge against Louis of Orleans, who had been dragged in the streets and murdered by John years prior.
Now's not the time.
No. And then John's son, Philip, as a form of retaliation, formed an alliance with the English.
What?
And according to the video, it would, quote, prolong the 100 Years' War for decades.
Holy shit.
So now Burgundy is allied with England, and England now has Flanders, Normandy, Brittany, Gascony, Aquitaine, and Burgundy. So they basically have most of France at this point.
Damn.
Yeah. Really, France is not doing well right now. This continued to further weaken France, of course. I mean,
of course.
They barely have royalty. Oh, I remembered why. Charles VI was still alive. He just was not actively really ruling. So that's why there wasn't another king.
Okay.
That's why. Because he's still alive. He's still king. He's just not mentally well. But he signed the Treaty of Troyes on May 21st, 1420. And his treaty said that Henry V would become the new heir apparent, and he could marry Charles's daughter, Catherine.
Okay.
So that's the second of Charles's daughters that's being married off, but she's actually like an adult woman.
Oh, thank God.
Or more of an adult woman. She's not 6. And so Henry would be heir apparent, and Henry's and Catherine's son would be king.
Okay.
So Henry returned to France in 1422, took a little bit more land, but he ended up falling ill and dying that year. So he named his brother John, Duke of Bedford, another John, Duke of Bedford, as his heir apparent in France, and Humphrey Gloucester was renamed regent in England because Henry's son, Henry VI, was 9 months old when he was crowned king. Technically.
What?
Just a mess. And then shortly after this, Charles VI died. But his son, Charles VII, named himself king, but, I mean, like, according to the treaty, Henry VI is now king of France. So.
Wow.
In 1423, a new treaty was signed, and it combined Brittany, Burgundy, and Normandy, and named Henry VI as King of France. So it was made official. This also increased fighting because there were people that were loyal to the Dauphin and to France, and so there was a lot more battles against French and English and Allied forces. In 1424, we have the Battle of Verneuil. Another horrible loss for the French. I'm not going to go into detail. It was basically a second Battle of Agincourt.
Wow.
Major loss.
They are really not learning any lessons.
They're really not. And then in 1428, 1429, we have the Siege of Orleans, where the English was sieging upon the city. It wasn't very successful because Orleans was huge, and it was surrounded by walls, and there wasn't a lot of men, like, to do the siege, but, like, they had been hit so hard. And it was to the point where, like, they had suffered so many losses up to this point. Charles VII was ready to give up. Yeah. Until our extra special character, Joan of Arc.
What?
Joan of Arc.
I'm sorry. I'm looking around to see if this is real life. Yep, feels real. Joan of fucking Arc?
Yes.
I'm gonna be for real. I thought she was made up.
No, she's a real person.
Damn. Tell me all about
Emily's
her.
having a crisis. So, Joan of Arc was a teenage girl that began having visions and believed she began receiving messages from God and the Archangel Michael that she was going to lead a French army to save Orleans and have the Dauphin officially coronated as King Charles VII.
Okay.
So she traveled, so at this time, in 1428 or so, she goes to Poitiers, where she had to, like, prove herself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say, like, I'm a woman of God. She had to prove her virginity, which I think was really weird. Because she was still, like, a young girl at this point, like a teenager.
Yeah.
But, you know. And so after the Church of France, like, yes, this is a holy girl, she went to Chinon to meet the Dauphin. And he was holed up in one of his castles there. And she convinced him, like, hey, my name's Joan. I'm on a holy mission to restore you as King of France. And God told me I'm going to do that. And he was like, this is the best idea I've heard in my entire life. So this is, like, he was literally about to give up his claim to the French throne because he was so down in the dumps. Now this teenage girl is like, I will win it for you. And he's like, sure, fine. What do you need? I have nothing else to lose at this point. So she's outfitted with armor. She's given an army. She finds a magic sword somehow. And she leads a contingent to Orleans.
This is made up. There's no way.
I don't know much about the magic sword. It's gone down in history as being a magic sword.
That seems like the most realistic part. I
know. So, Joan gets to Blois, which is outside. I know. I will never not laugh. And Blois comes up a lot more in the story, but too much is going on already. So, she gets to Blois, which is outside of Orleans. And she sees a bunch of men that are down in the dumps. They're like, this war is useless. She inspires them all to keep fighting with her holy message. And they're like, yes, let's go free Orleans from the siege.
Fucking Joan said to. Let's do it.
Fucking Joan. So the English are in Orleans. They have set up, like, battlements around the city for their besiegement. When Joan got to Orleans, she said, leave. And they said no. So she gets into Orleans, and while other military leaders are working to strategize and gain sources, Joan is working morale. She's inspiring the city. She's inspiring the people who've been besieged for a year at this point. Like, they're giving up hope. And she's like, no, like, by the glory of God, we can do this. We got this. And she also worked to, like, set up reconnaissance missions to, like, spy on the English to, like, get their positions and stuff.
That's cool
and
as shit.
Their supplies. So on May 4th, I think it's 1929, an attack was made on a... Sorry. 14. We went way forward in time.
They fought a long time.
It was a really long siege. Joan's immortal. No.
Wouldn't surprise me.
So on May 4th, 1429, an attack was made on a British settlement east of Orleans by some other guys. And Joan heard about it. So she, like, she jumped on her horse and, like, ran to this battle and joined the fray. I think in the video it said that, like, the Frenchmen were losing, but then Joan inspired them with her words of encouragement and God, and they won. They won the battle. And they retook the settlement. And then they got word that the English are sending in reinforcements. And they're like, oh my God, we have to get the English out of here. or we're never going to
Right.
like break this siege. They're going to destroy us all. So now they, like Joan and the other, the army starts launching attacks on the other English outposts around Orleans the next day. And they actually start making progress. They start winning the battles. While fighting at the Bastille des Augustins, the French started taking heavy losses, and Joan was even shot by an arrow, quote, between her shoulder and her neck.
Ow!
But according to the video, she found a place to pray, and then swiftly rejoined the battle and continued to reinforce and embolden the soldiers.
Man, you need a bandage.
I know. She has God on her side. She don't need nothing but
Fair.
God.
You know what? Sure.
So the way that Orleans was structured, it wasn't fully moated, but there was a river in front of the city, and there was a long bridge that went to it, and that was a really hard point for the French when they first started. The English couldn't get across it, but then the French couldn't get across it. It was just weird. But they're on this bridge, and the English had been backed onto this bridge and actually started retreating because of the incoming French forces. And the French demand the English surrender, and they said no.
Of course.
And then the bridge collapsed, and all the English soldiers drowned.
What? What are the chances?
Because Joan of Arc was there.
So all you're saying is that they just needed a woman to lead?
They needed a woman, who may have been schizophrenic to lead their armies.
There are two options. It was the voice of God, or it was schizophrenia. It was one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
That bridge did collapse at a suspicious time, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give her that.
So, after they win that battle, the English reformed from the siege lines to battle formations, because they're like, okay, like, the French are coming, we gotta, like, more around, like, the city on the other side of the river. They're like, okay, we're getting ready for a battle. The French army lines up, Joan included, and the English lost their nerve and retreated.
The English lost their nerve?
I guess they saw a woman, like, riding in the army, and they're like, nope.
They were probably out. Like, that's the devil.
Well,
obviously.
Probably, honestly. We'll talk about what happens to Joan, unfortunately.
Oh, man.
But after this victory, Joan called for Charles to be crowned king. Because she's like, we won Orleans. He's king now. And the nobles were like, well, England still has most of France, so no. So she starts recapturing castles.
What a badass!
I know.
She looks scary in this painting.
The one that's the Siege of Orleans?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm getting to it. It really, I think, encapsulates her. Her.
Yeah.
Like, she does not give a fuck. She is in the middle of this armed conflict with spears and arrows, and she is waving her flag, and she said, we're fighting for God in France.
Why don't we have a movie about her?
I'm sure there are movies.
Okay, we should look one up.
I read a book about her, I think. I think it was very heavily fictionalized, and I didn't really understand it, because I was like, what's a dauphin? I don't know what that means.
Dauphin!
So I think I was in, like, junior high, and I was like, I don't understand what this means.
Yeah, seriously, I feel like Joan of Arc has turned into one of those characters that, like, I really legitimately thought that it was made up. And I guess not.
It looks like there might be a couple movies made out. One in 1999 called The Messenger, the story of Joan of Arc.
Seems like she's such a badass.
It looks like there haven't been any recently. Well, no, there's one in 2019.
Okay.
I think. But a lot of, like, very historical movies, too.
Yeah.
Like, the earliest one I see is from 1900. 1948, 1928, 1954. There's a mini-series in 1999. So it looks like there hasn't been one recently, but there have been movies made out.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 1429, we have the Battle of Patay. Mm-hmm. The French forces finally got the jump on the longbow-men.
Oh, hell yeah. At this point, I'm rooting for the French because I feel bad for them. So horrible. Anyway.
They're definitely the underdogs in this story. My personal opinion, I'm not on either side because a lot of shit happens.
I'm not either,
no,
but...
I know.
I love a good underdog story.
Finally, they beat the longbowmen. And it was really after this battle, they're like, we beat the longbowmen. We beat the English
How did they do it?
Let's see if I can remember. So it was like, honestly, it was an accident. Like the English army had been set up and they had a forward contingent of longbow-men. And the French army was advancing and I think they had a couple flanking contingents. And then the English longbow-men got distracted by a deer or something, ran out from behind them. And this distraction allowed the French to run up on them really quick and overpower them. And then that portion of the battle, the morale started dropping from the English and they started retreating or just weren't able to really get their feet under themselves after this surprise attack and this distraction. So it was kind of an accident, but they were able to do it.
Was Joan there?
I'm not 100% sure. Okay. She may have been. Let me Google it real quick.
If she was, that was a deer sent by God. Had to have been.
Looks like no.
Ah, damn. The president. Nope, that was just a random deer.
It was just a random deer sent by God because he loved the French. Hadn't up to this point, but now he did. So, but this victory inspired Charles to join Joan. He's like, you're right. And he finally allowed himself to be crowned king as King Charles VII. Didn't really do a lot militarily. He didn't gain more power or anything like that, but it was very inspirational to the French people.
Okay.
Meanwhile, John of Bedford, who is King Henry's brother, he was still in Paris at this time, and he had actually had time to reinforce the city. And Joan came to help retake France, but the English were able to hold them off, and Joan was actually captured. Oh. And in 1431, she was burned at the stake for heresy. She was 19 years old.
What a badass 19 years.
Seriously, she's, besides some women who are married off or regents, she's the only one of the only named women in this story.
It's baffling how women were treated. Back then, I'm not even talking about currently. It's a different story. But these women are literally holding shit together, holding the world together. And they are treated like absolute crap. And
they're being used as pawns. I mean, I'm never going to get over the 6-year-old who was traded as a marriage contract for a peace treaty. That is the most bonkers shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Insanity.
So, the English were able to resist the sieges and attacks against Paris, but they were becoming broke. They were spread very thin, losing money. And there continued to be discontent by English holdings through 1434. So in 1435, John of Bedford dies, and he is replaced by Richard of York, who I think he's a brother or a cousin or something. He's related to them somehow.
Who knows?
And so remember, we had John of Burgundy. His son Philip became the new Duchy of Burgundy after John was killed, and he allied with the English.
Right.
Mostly. Philip was also, like, very much so an opportunist and was definitely playing both sides. He was the new Charles the Bad.
Damn it.
Philip and Charles VII signed the Treaty of Arras, which pledged Burgundy to France in exchange for more land. So now there's more victories in Normandy and northern France, and Paris was eventually won back by the French.
Okay.
Do you remember little baby Henry VI, who was named king when he was 9 months old? He's finally old enough to rule in 1439. He's finally come of age, and he tried negotiating peace, but failed.
How old was he? What is the coming of age?
I think like 13 or 14. Let me see how old he was. So this was in 1439. He became king in 1423. No, he couldn't have been 6 years old. Oh, 1435. 39.
You said 23?
So he was born somewhere in 1422, 23, and he became of age in 1439.
13. 16.
That sounds right.
16, yeah. God, could you imagine being 16 years old and negotiating a peace treaty?
From a war that's already been going on for 100 years at this point. His peace negotiations failed. Oh. They didn't go through. France continued to take lands and castles. In 1444, there was a 2-year treaty that was negotiated by William of Suffolk, who would later go on to be one of the causes of the War of the Roses 10 years later.
Oh.
Which we're not talking about the War of the Roses. It just came up in the video, and I thought it was an interesting fact. We'll probably talk about that in next year or something. I need a break from medieval war after these episodes.
Yeah.
Also in that same year, Charles VII levied permanent taxes and established a standing army, which was not a thing before this. And with this, like, permanent taxes, they were fixed. And this also allowed a monthly salary to be earned by his standing army, instead of just sometimes not even being paid at all because you don't have money. But now, like, there's guaranteed money. And now you have a standing army who will work for their salary.
Smart.
Because desertion was also really common back then, because you don't even know if you're getting anything out of this. There's nothing in it for you. I'm just going to dip. But now it's like, oh, like, this person is buying their loyalty, so now I'm going to earn my money. In 1445, England still had Gascony, Normandy, and Calais. Not new, but new to the French, a new form of weaponry was starting to be used more often. Gunpowder and artillery.
Ooh. Okay.
We go back to Richard of York, who again he's in charge of Normandy, in English hands. He wasn't ready to give up these lands, so they were resisting the French attacks. But in 1449, the French started making lots of gains and recapturing the castles throughout Normandy. England was having a hard time rallying their own resources. They were having trouble getting men, and they couldn't always afford to pay their soldiers, which is what I just talked about. Like, if you don't pay your soldiers, why are they going to stick around? So eventually, in 1450, the English were able to get it together enough to get to Normandy to try to reinforce their things. And the English sent over a man named Thomas Curiel. And he was making slow but steady progress through Normandy. So I think he landed in Brittany, which I think was still in English hands, and like kind of made his way through Brittany up into Normandy. Slow, very slow, but very steady progress. Again, just what we talked about, just kind of obliterating as he went. So now we get to the Battle of Fourminier. The English have 6,000 men. The French have 3,000 men. Curiel and about 1,200 of his men were captured.
Oh.
And 3,800 were killed in this battle.
Whoa.
So major, major victory on behalf of the French, with half of the men. the tides have really turned. Like, at first it was England that was the underdogs, a smaller army, demolishing the larger army. Now it's France demolishing the English army with fewer men. And I think a lot of it had to do with this artillery, like the cannons with gunpowder, extremely lethal. Way more lethal than longbows.
Yeah.
So England's hopes for winning the land back were dashed.
Right.
And France continued to capture these settlements. By August of 1450, Normandy was back completely in French hands.
Wow.
Moving slightly back to 1449, Gascony was currently being reconquered by the French. But it was going to be a lot more difficult because, like I mentioned, Gascony has been under English control for centuries at this point, for 300 years, had much stronger roots, more people loyal to the English.
Yeah. But
by 1451 had fully captured Gascony.
Okay.
So Gascony was completely in English or French hands at this point. I don't know why this keeps happening. Charles VII started heavily taxing Gascony to pay for its protection of Gascony, and Gascony did not like that.
Yeah.
So in 1452, Gascony invited England to come back and take it over again. Which it did. England was like, yes, we would love to have you back. Thank you. And it's ironic because Charles was trying to protect his lands by raising taxes to pay for the protection, but then it ended up losing him Gascony.
Right.
In the long run. Anyway, the English did take it back. So now we have the last major battle of the 100 Years' War. We're nearing the end. In 1453, we have the Battle of Castellon. So the French, again, they're just full of W's here. They decided to upgrade their fighting style. So they're like, hey, let's try some new stuff. And I think it was more, their use of artillery. Mm-hmm. They may have even upgraded to longbows. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they did. And just their overall way that they would space themselves out and structure themselves in battle was updated a lot more effective. And they started besieging the town of Castellon, which was in English hands. So the French army had 8,000, the English army had 9,000, so a lot more equal. Yeah. But major loss for the English. They lost between 500 and 4,000 men.
Wow.
I don't know why there's such a discrepancy. That's just what the video said. And the French had minimal losses.
Wow.
So this is the last. There were still skirmishes, of course, but this was the last major battle of the 100 Years' War. Over time, more castles in Gascony fell, and by the end of 1453, the English were ousted from Gascony. Calais, and that was the last stronghold the English had. And we'd still have Calais. Calais did remain in English hands. They were still kind of fighting over it, but nothing huge, just little skirmishes, some friction. Mm-hmm. But a treaty was never signed in 1453 either. So it was they had that last battle, and they just never really had another big battle. It wasn't until 1475.
Oh, geez.
Louis XI and Edward IV signed the Treaty of Picardy, which officially brought the 100 Years' War to an end for 7 years. It didn't pick back up, but it was a peace treaty for 7 years.
Right.
Because treaties were not indefinite. And in the treaty, France was sovereign. It had all of its own territories except for Calais, but all of France was French again.
Wow. They really came in last minute for the win.
Mm-hmm. They really did.
That's crazy.
Because of Joan of Arc. They were losing horribly until she came into the picture. And they're like, oh yeah, we can do this. We have a military and we can
Do you know what she
things.
did? She really not just brought life into them, but you need to think differently. Mm-hmm. Why are you doing the same old shit? It's not working.
doing the same shit for 100 years and it's not working. And then this girl comes in and said, "Hey, fuckers."
Have you thought maybe it's the longbows?
It's the longbows. Get shields or something.
God bless it.
What are the after effects? I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because time doesn't stop, so things just keep happening. Essentially, France won the war, ultimately. The English vacated France except for Calais. France worked to strengthen its monarchy. Like, hey, we have a lot of issues with our monarchy system. Let's work to, like, bolster it, make it a little bit stronger. It can't just collapse and a baby can be crowned king. You know? Right. And in Britain, it was like, hey, we like this conquering stuff. Let's continue to conquer and expand our empire.
And eventually we'll steal things and put them in our museum.
Yep. Yeah. In 1455, so after the last battle, but before the peace treaty was signed, in 1455, the War of the Roses began. Primarily, it's a civil war in England. Not getting into it. Mm-hmm. And then between 1465 and 67, King Louis XI was working to unify the duchies of France. So, like, especially in the video, we talk about Brittany, we talk about Normandy, we talk about Burgundy, and they're separate, almost kingdoms. Right. And so King Louis XI was really like, let's make this a unified France. Like, you can't just go off and align with England or Spain or whatever. Like, you are a part of France now. So unifying France. And again, Charles VII established a standing army, permanent taxes, which further strengthened the economy and the monarchy and the military of France. Both countries became stronger nationally among the general population. And actually, I learned this in the video, that up until this point, the English nobility still spoke French because a lot of them descended from French lines. Like the English throne descended from William of Normandy. So very tied in French, but they were like, hey, maybe we can, like, start connecting with our people and not, like, just be all hoity-toity, and we'll actually start speaking English. And they did.
Wow.
And that's what I have on the 100 Years' War. France became French. England stayed English. A lot of people died.
All of that. And it was almost like they just went back to the original. Mm-hmm. Now, I know England, at the beginning of the war, England did have some of French territories, but it obviously wasn't always like that. So, like, French just got France back. England just has English.
Yeah.
So, 100 years.
Now they're going through their own civil war.
For nothing.
It's really sad. Like, I mean, and we were talking about, like, the loss of life and just the major battles. Yeah. But I didn't go into the other civil wars that were going on, the more minor battles that happened. I didn't even cover every battle that was talked about in the video. Right. I just talked about the ones that, like, seemed to be the most important as far as, like, kind of either solidifying the British military might, or if there was one that turned the tide of the war. Right. Or was just important to the story. Like, there's way more that were talked about in the video I watched.
It's not like 100 Years' War and we fight a battle every 20 years. Like, it was ongoing.
Yeah. Again, with a bunch of other stuff going on in the background. I simplified a lot of it. Yeah. So I highly recommend that video. Again, it's in the show notes. It's like 3.5 hours. My videos all combined are probably, like, not even 2.5. Yeah. And I simplify things way down because we were talking and commentary. Yeah. So I probably have, like, maybe an hour and a half of actual information from the video in my episode.
You did a good job. I held in there. You. I'm really proud that I held in there.
You did.
This is heavy.
It's very dense. I hope I did a good enough job explaining. There are some things that, like, I probably could have gone back and, like, dug a little bit deeper to explain some things, but at this point I was like, I can't. I
can't.
I've been in medieval history and war for a week at this point. I have no more brain power.
This is why we can't be specialized.
No.
We gotta rotate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need something maybe a little bit more modern.
Yes.
Actually, I am talking about something more modern because I just remembered I'm still researching my topic that we're talking about tomorrow. I was like, oh yeah, I do have a topic I've been covering, and it is more recent.
I haven't started. So you're doing great.
Everything is fine. Well, that's what I got for you. I was really excited to tell y'all about Joan of Arc because that shit hit me like a brick out of nowhere. I was like, Joan of fucking Arc's in this story? What? I was super excited.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I love her, and I'm so sorry she was burned at the stake at 19.
I know. It's really sad. She lived a very tragic life.
Yeah.
Very short, tragic life, unfortunately. Maybe we'll talk about, like, famous heroines at some point in a bonus episode. We can get more into her story.
Oh, I like that idea. All right.
Well. Socials. If you held in there with us and you wanna chat with us more, you can find us on Facebook. Ill-Equipped History podcast group and page. Tell us how much you love Joan and hate Charles the Bad.
Yeah. I'm already annoyed just hearing his name. Just like freaking Charles the Bad. Instagram.
At Ill-Equipped History.
TikTok.
At Ill-Equipped History.
Gmail.
Ill-equippedhistory@gmail.com.
And Patreon.
Patreon.com/ill-equippedhistory.
$5 a month. You get bonus episodes.
$5 foot long. You don't get sandwiches, though. Just podcasts.
If you come to my house, I will make you a sandwich. But
she makes a pretty good sandwich.
It'd be really weird if you just showed up at my house, so please don't do that.
I paid $5 a month for this sandwich, Emily. I want my sandwich.
Yes, but how'd you get the address? I need to know.
Well, don't show up to Emily's house asking for sandwiches. Don't do that.
Please don't. Call me first. I need the ingredients.
And if God gives you visions and messages, lead France into victory.
Yeah. And if your name is Charles, don't be bad. We've had enough of that.
Be one of the good Charleses.
Exactly. And also, if someone else, we're going back to the first episode here. If someone else is crowned king, maybe don't start 100 years war getting your crown back. Mm-hmm. That was rude.
Yeah, and a lot of people died.
Yeah. Because kings throw hissy fits.
Yep. So. Can't relate.
No.
I've never thrown a territorial dispute over France.
I have thrown a hissy fit, though. So
yeah, I have done that.
Just a normal, average person hissy fit.
Where no one dies.
I just act like I'm dying because someone told me no.